It's been more than a year since the OpenTofu GA dropped in January 2024. Way to go, devs. And 3 versions have dropped since then, nearly 4. We're really excited for the one that's coming next. And each one introduced much-awaited features the community requested, some with great success and adoption that have been very exciting for the folks that are using OpenTofu. We've gathered this esteemed panel to answer your most pressing questions, and we do want you to grill them just like you would grill some really fine tofu. So you are more than welcome to get on up and ask questions at any point during the panel. It's an open mic, and it's totally a community-driven panel. But we have prepped some questions as well in case you're camera shy. So yeah, without further ado, I'd like each of you to introduce yourselves, tell the folks here what you guys have been working on, and yeah, a little bit about kind of your OpenTofu journey. So.
Hi, my name is James Humphries. I was originally a SpaceLift engineer, and I was pulled into the OpenTofu project on day 1 to get us going with the fork. I'm currently now, I forget my job title, I think it changed like last week. It's head of open source, but I'm working full-time on OpenTofu, sponsored by SpaceLift, and have been working on OpenTofu now, since day 1, so 15, 16 months. I lose track of time, really. Yeah, that's me.
Good job.
Sure. My name is Christian Mesh. I am the tech lead of OpenTofu. What that entails day to day is working with these fine gentlemen.
Very fine.
Figure out what our backlog is, work with the technical steering committee, some of whom are here today, and just figure out how we can best serve the community. I've been working on the project for almost, a little bit over 2 years now. Again, time gets weird. Something like that. Year and a half. I don't know. Anyways, I've been working on it for quite some time now, almost from the beginning, have been the tech lead for almost a year now, and thoroughly enjoy working with this amazing community and group of developers.
Woohoo!
Hi, everybody. I'm Arel. I also, like James, I've started working on the project since day 1.
Woohoo!
And yeah.
Oh!
And yeah, and I've been working on the project as a dev up until like a few months ago. Now I'm still the point of contact in NV0 with everything OpenTofu. I manage the OpenTofu engineers of NV0, the outsource engineers, and still involved with the project still. So I've been working on it for like more than a year as a dev. Now I'm more the managerial side, kind of, in NV0.
Awesome. All right, so let us get started. So since OpenTofu has dropped, a long list of features has been released. Very impressive ones: state encryption, the .tofu file extensions, early evaluation, and a lot of this Arel will be talking about in his awesome lightning talk. Stick around for that one. But as OpenTofu contributors and maintainers, which of these features got you most excited and why?
I can start. I think static evaluation was something that I've pushed for fairly early on. It's one of those things where it might not be the right solution, but it is a solution that people have been asking for and have been looking for quite some time. Ideally, it's one of those features that it gets people working today, excuse me, and will allow us to build better patterns in the future. It kind of opens up, lose my voice already too. This is great. Opens up the door to a lot of features, a lot of workflows that have been very hard to do in the past, and has allowed us to really prototype some stuff that has been asked for quite some time. Provider for each, that was something we couldn't really do with our current skill set, with understanding of how tofu works without it. But yeah, it's been something that I, as a developer, before I worked on Tofu, was very passionate about, brought that to the community, brought that to the team through the RFC process, and I'm very excited with how that's gone so far. James?
Pass over that.
Oh, Arel.
All right, yeah, so for me, it was mainly the exclude flag. I think I'm the one who raised that up internally, and for a couple of reasons. First of all, I've just working in the industry. I've heard this request a lot, I've heard people talk about that, and it seemed really simple to me, and it wasn't that difficult on my end. And it was, I think, the #1 most upvoted request in Terraform for like a decade, and it was never answered. So that's why I wanted to take a stab at it, and yeah, we have it now.
Impressive. Way to go.
Awesome. And then for me, this is a little bit out of the box and a little bit left field, but I always try and pitch this as a feature that performance and stability of OpenTofu, for me, is a real big passion point.
100%.
So I really feel like we've done a lot of improvements around writing out large state files to disk, just little things like improving how we write JSON to disk. And then stability for me, working around the OpenTofu registry that powers everything, we have had almost 0 complaints about things. I think thanks to Cloudflare, we've had maybe 5 minutes downtime, if that, over the whole period of things. So it's been really stable. We're serving millions of requests and nobody complains about it. And it's kind of like the unspoken hero of everything in OpenTofu. And I really hope that we can add a lot more like performance and stability over the next few months, because we all really want our runs to be a bit faster.
Yeah, absolutely. Probably the most hidden feature is just how well it performs, and way to go, team, on making it so seamless. That transition from Terraform to OpenTofu is, seemingly easy, but there was a lot of work that went in behind the scenes. Give them a round of applause for that. So yeah, thanks for that. And continuing on the same track, did it actually surprise you which features are more popular, generating more excitement from the community? And why do you think those features were more widely adopted, just kind of from your experience?
I think a really good example for this, and I'm sorry if I'm stealing your ideas on this one, is the state encryption in general, where it was surprising to me how long people had been asking for state encryption in Terraform and in the ecosystem in general, because all of us have to do this box ticking exercise of, are we storing data encrypted at rest? We all have to go and do this. There's a CISO, every kind of big company that's making sure that we do this. And so to go and add that and to see the amount of value and people saying, thank you, this is fantastic. Like, I've needed this for a while, or I've had to rely on S3's encryption at rest, and trying to pitch this to my manager has been a nightmare. So adding that was really great for me to see all the feedback. Yeah, Christian?
I'm going to Arel.
Sure. For me, I think that I learned throughout my time in Tofu. It's something I know in general, but it's sometimes hard to discern which features people really want, or it's just like a vocal minority. And then when that feature is out, you see that there's not much traction. I think it's also relevant when working in any company, but that's very much also true with a project that has a community like this one. And I always had like guesses as to how many people and how people will react to things. And I think the one I was most surprised about was like the latest release 1.9 with, because I've heard a lot of things about exclude flag and provider for each, and I saw a lot in social media, in Reddit and stuff, and I was really surprised at their reception, mainly in Reddit. I saw a lot of positive feedback, so yeah, that's me.
So overall, we try to listen to the community wherever possible. That is our driving force. I myself, again, my contract with SpaceLift, I have no idea what they do. Like, functionally speaking, I don't know, other than what's on the front page of the website. But the reason I bring this up is that what we work on is what the community asks for. We try to look at what is being asked for. We try and see what the pain points are. We see where's the biggest impact we can have, what's the biggest number of people we can help with a feature, and that's what guides us. So I will say I haven't been maybe as surprised as you guys, as the question's looking for, but I think the lack of surprise for me in the reception of these features, in how people are using them and enjoying them and seeing how it's improving the workflows, that is what's showing me that we are doing the right thing. That our guesses, or our intuition, as Arel was saying, is correct, at least so far. It is it is a service related job. It is trying to figure out how we can help the most number of people, and I think so far we've been listening pretty well, and I hope my job is to ensure that we continue to do so.
You have anything, Gad? You're good? Oh, did you? Apologies. Sorry, I missed. All right, so I'm going to take a moment to pause and see if anybody from the audience has any questions. Feel free. This is a community-driven panel, just like the project itself. Don't be shy. Anyone? Anyone? Bueller? All right, next question. So what's currently the biggest challenge with building and maintaining OpenTofu? What are some of the most challenging things you feel that you're working on, and why are they so tough?
From what I see, what I saw as a dev, and also right now from the side, I do see it's pretty hard maintaining such a large project with a lot of history and not the best test suite to make sure everything still works. When you add a new feature, you need to make sure a lot of weird edge cases still work, and they're not always covered, and it's hard to tell. And having that knowledge and history, or just a lot more experience in the code base, does help there. But that is one of the main issues that we saw, and I think Christian talked before about some ideas that we've had about testing and adding new ways to make sure that we're not breaking things as we go, because we do want to go faster and build more features, but also have the confidence that we're not changing things we're not supposed to. Yeah.
The term I use frequently for that is software archaeology, which is quite a lot of fun, but is it's an interesting process. James?
Yeah, so I'll switch the subject a little bit, and I think it's always really interesting to talk about the difficult parts of working on OpenTofu. These guys are right. We've inherited a code base. It's like joining a job as a junior, and all of the seniors have left, right? We've got to go and figure out from the Git commit history why somebody did something 10 years ago, and you go back and you go say, oh, someone just did a commit that said fixes, or something like this. And it was like, how people working. We don't understand what was going on behind the scenes. The previous authors, we're super thankful for everything that they've done. We're standing on the shoulders of giants. We've inherited a fantastic code base. But when there's 3 packages that are called graph and none of them are documented, and you've got to go and figure out what's going on under the hood, it can be a little bit overwhelming. It can really be the code archaeology. We have to dig deep, and you've got to be willing to dig deep. And I think that takes like a rare breed of developer who loves to dive into these kind of code bases. And so I always find that really interesting.
Oh yeah, So from my point of view, it's. Sorry, I've completely lost my train of thought. So sorry. Next question.
The question was about what's challenging. So if you're challenging.
Right, sorry.
There you go. See?
So what's challenging is figuring out what to do next a lot of the time. As I mentioned before, it's listening to the community, figuring out what to do next, and trying to understand why certain things haven't been done. This also gets back into the software archaeology, but trying to take a significant amount of feedback spread across multiple areas with lots of different ways of describing the same thing, and trying to get the community all rallying behind one particular idea, all voicing their opinions on an RFC, saying, as the core team, given all these 20 tickets that describe kind of the same thing, is this what you're asking for? To have that conversation, to get that feedback, and to let the community know we are listening. We rely so heavily on your feedback, on your ideas, and we want to be doing right by you. But figuring out that feedback loop, keeping people engaged, it's difficult. Because availability changes. Our developers are trying to figure out when they can start working on projects once consensus has been reached with ourselves, with the community. So my job as tech lead a lot of the time is to figure out how best to frame things, how to get these RFCs in the hands of the people who are going to be able to help us most with them. And we've had a lot of success with that in the past, but it is tricky. Like, for example, for OCI registries, we had the OCI folks coming and talking with us, giving us links to the roadmap, some stuff that's coming up there. When James is working on his PRs around OpenTelemetry, we've got some of the OpenTelemetry devs coming and talking with us on our RFC about what's worked in the past, what they suggest that we do, and just bouncing ideas off of us. And that's to me showing that the process is working, but figuring out how to maintain that process and evolve it to get more feedback, to hear more of the community, it's difficult.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wonder if, AV, are we fixing this or what's happening there? And, yep. In the meantime, we'll do audience participation.
I was wondering, in terms of the migration path from Terraform to OpenTofu, I think it was a drop-in replacement from till 1.6. And, well, as we all know, Big Evil Corp has purchased HashiCorp and rounded up somewhere this year. So potentially that could mean a big push in the next coming years, so 2-3 years, when IBM will probably start monetizing HashiCorp a lot more. How do you guys see the migration path in 2 years? Are there features you are not implementing, which Terraform is? Like, you're doing like stuff that Terraform isn't, but there's probably also stuff that Terraform isn't. So is it still a viable migration, or are we starting infrastructure as code from scratch in 2 or 3 years?
That is an excellent question. It's the balance that we're trying to figure out on the core team with the community, with the steering committee, is how much do we put our time into innovation? How much energy do we put into building and making OpenTofu what we understand the community is asking for, versus maintaining compatibility with some of the things that HashiCorp are doing today? We have to be careful about this because, again, their code is licensed differently than ours. So that means that usually it's one of the core team who has a contract, a very clear understanding of what they can and cannot look at to work on that part of the code. So that does limit how much the community can help with keeping parity. But it's a conversation that we have constantly. Arel he has in the past gone through, looked at the publicly available information when a new HashiCorp release comes out, and presents a list to the developers of what we think, what he thinks the new features are, a quick description, and then the core team takes a look. Then that gets turned into GitHub issues, it gets turned into a potential roadmap, and we iterate on that. We've had some wonderful community members maintain cani.tf, and that can give you a more up-to-date understanding of what is supported in one project versus the other. But a lot of the times we are implementing what we see most requested from the community and looking for when that lines up with something that HashiCorp has recently implemented. So a lot of, if you've been looking at our release notes over the past year, you can see in some cases we are in lockstep with HashiCorp for some of these features, but in other cases we lag behind for a release or two because we're waiting for the community to say, yes, this is not just something that HashiCorp may have built and put in Terraform and they're excited about it, but the community is not there yet. Or it might be the opposite, where the community has been asking for this for years and HashiCorp's finally gotten around to it. So it's figuring out how do we spend our time to maintain that compatibility, and usually view it through the lens of what is the community using, what are they most likely to run into and have problems with. Do either of you want to say anything? Sure.
Compatibility is always really interesting. And there is going to have to be a point where we make a decision to say we're not going to go implement something, or we're going to implement something different. The reason we do this is we try and add in flexibility. So if we're implementing OpenTofu specific features, there's a whole conversation about how we now have to support .tofu files for module authors, because we don't want to go and fragment the module ecosystem. This is really important to us because we want to make sure that people can switch over. But also, we're trying to be the good guys. People can switch back. I shouldn't say this too loudly, but like we believe that people should have a drop-in replacement both ways, and we'd love it if HashiCorp was on the same boat with us here. But I believe that all of the effort that we've put in is I had someone tell me this morning, and it's a story I've heard multiple times. They had OpenTofu installed in their Docker container, and they accidentally switched because TerraGrunt or another tool detected OpenTofu, and it's the default, and they switched and they didn't realize. And we don't hear stories about people migrating because the migration path is as simple as just swapping a binary out for another one, and it's just working. Unless you are using one of Terraform's, I think there's one feature that we don't support. I can't remember the name of it. We just added support for S3 native locking, which we were a version behind on. But unless you are using the absolute latest and greatest, we are compatible right now. But that may not always be the story. We may have to start putting effort into providing migration guides or migration tooling. But we'll make it as easy as possible for as long as possible.
And one quick note, both projects do have the 1.0 compatibility promise. You can find it on either of the documentation websites. And that goes into more details about what exactly we believe should be compatible going forward. I know I don't have any plans to break compatibility, introduce a 2.0 or something like that for quite some time. We recognize that people have a lot of legacy that they are trying to bring over, and that is one of our biggest priorities, is to make sure that is as seamless as possible. Thank you.
Awesome. Any other questions from the audience? We'd love more audience participation. Don't be afraid. 1, 2, go. Step up to the mic would be best.
Hi. I have a question about the OCI registry stuff. So what are your current thoughts on that, and how's it going?
Okay, Christian hasn't been working for 2 weeks and hasn't got his OpenTofu brain on, so I can answer this one. So OCI registries are really important. We realized that there was a large amount of people who have their own provider and module registries that they want to be running internally. And it's very heavy to go and bring along another tool for a provider registry or a module registry, and there's a large amount of overhead in setting up these private registries with authentication and everything like this. And we realized that everybody and their nan out there has the GitHub container registry set up, or they might already be using Red Hat's key.io or an existing piece of tooling for OCIs or the Open Container Interface. So we've been working, our initial release is focusing on people who want to have a provider or a module mirror, and this is coming up in our next release. We just released our alpha last week. And the idea there is for people who are maybe maintaining internal providers within their own company, maybe they've got some internal APIs they don't want to expose, or for people who want to maintain their own fork of, say, the AWS provider or the GCP or Google Beta provider, they can maintain their own fork internally a lot easier and do it with the existing infrastructure that they've already got. Everyone's already got container repos built into GitHub, GitLab, and everything else. And we want to go and sit on top of that without requiring people to bring along their own other infrastructure. There are a lot of other advantages on top of this, so you can get a lot of like caching of layering, and we're also introducing things like the software bill of materials and signing of these containers, so you can be sure end to end that your provider is actually the provider shipped by the author, and that everything that you're doing is tracked along the way. Do you guys have any other comments on OCI? No?
That's great.
Fantastic, thank you.
I had a question specifically for Christian. Sorry, like you're going to have.
Sure.
At the very beginning of you mentioned you had a comment on the right way of for a feature when you were mentioning early evaluation. Can you maybe share some thoughts on your philosophy for implementing features doing things the right way versus the practical way, and kind of how you navigate some of that, because especially with the HashiCorp side of things, there's a lot of opinion, so we'd love to hear more.
Yeah.
Do you know what the difference is between a good question and a great question? A good question is going to be asked. A great question is the next question. So you nailed it.
So what is the right way to build something? That is, as engineers, a lot of the times we think there is a perfect way to build something. We can sit and design something on a whiteboard for a decade. And in some cases, that is what's necessary. But In my opinion, for OpenTofu, the right way to build something is a way that is stable, a way that solves a problem that a user is experiencing today. There are, for examples, I'm going to pick on Arel a little bit, there are some technical reasons why you might not want to use target or exclude. They are difficult. They allow you to shoot yourself in the foot. And there's a lot of reasons that you would want to build software that doesn't allow people to shoot themselves in the foot, but that's very limiting. Static evaluation is one of those features. You can easily shoot yourself in the foot. Provider for reach. Again, huge foot gun, but at the same time, it's what people have been asking for. They want a solution to this problem, and this was the path we could reasonably take to get them there. It was if we're implementing something of that nature, we do want it to be opt-in. We try not to add foot guns that are easily accessible, but between documentation and the trust we have in our community that they will take the time to read the documentation to understand why this is a potentially difficult feature or problematic feature, that we would rather give them the tools than try to artificially limit them in what they can accomplish. I think the biggest thing I struggle with is making sure that the documentation is as thorough as it needs to be for some of these features. We're constantly improving it based on the feedback, based on the issues we get from our users. And I think, if anything, that's where we need to improve the most when introducing some of these potentially dangerous options. Or, dangerous isn't the right word. Potentially frustrating options, because you can easily back yourself into a corner with these features that I mentioned. But at the same time, I think the folks using our tool are happier to have them. They are happier to understand and take that risk upon themselves. So I think that's all I've got. Oh, James?
I'm just going to add on to this one. I think there's a very famous thing that we quote internally quite a lot, which is an XY problem, right? There's a website, I think xyproblem.com, where end users will raise an issue, and it's, I'm sorry if the author of this issue is in the crowd today, but I want to be able to symlink files, so I want to be able to have unknown local variables, and they've come to us with a solution at the end of the day. And we very often find ourselves stepping back, having a talk with this person in the community and saying, how can we solve this problem for everybody out there? I know you've got this vision of what is perfect for you, but maybe we can come up with a general solution that improves how locals are defined, or unknown locals can be handled in at runtime or plan time. But it's always important to try and take a step back and think about the bigger picture, because if we were to just fix something in the way that everybody asked for, we would end up with a mess of features. So, yeah.
Fantastic. We don't have much time left, so if there are any other folks that want to ask, go for it, and then we'll start to wrap up. The two questions, and then.
Yeah, I have a kind of follow-up question regarding the compatibility situation. Do you see the risk that there could be a time when providers are not compatible with Terraform and OpenTofu at the same time, which could potentially harm the ecosystem, because maintainers could decide to go only with Terraform or only with OpenTofu? And yeah, what do you think about it?
That's an excellent question. Personally, I can't speak on behalf of HashiCorp. What I can do is try and speculate on the driving forces behind the protocol that it's based on. This protocol is supported by thousands of providers across thousands, if not tens of thousands of companies, because we have no idea how many internal providers are also out there. But we're talking about, if compatibility is broken in that API in a significant way, then we're talking about a truly monumental amount of engineering effort, not just from HashiCorp and OpenTofu, but for the community at large. Personally, I don't see it as feasible. I think the biggest thing we have to watch out for in OpenTofu is understanding the new features that are being added to the protocol and finding how to best support them. But I don't think, at least personally, that there is any reasonable path away from the current protocol. Evolutions on top of it, improvements, I think that is well within the cards, but a lot of the support issues that we get are talking about, oh yeah, I'm running a provider that's 6 years old. And there's a lot of these organizations either are locked in due to constraints, referring to the previous talk, or just by the sheer amount of engineering effort that they can expend to upgrade. So upgrading provider takes time, it takes testing. And I think that, at least from OpenTofu's perspective, we're always considering how can we best improve upon that protocol, how can we maintain compatibility while allowing provider authors to do new things. But that legacy is so deep and it runs so core to everything that is built on top of OpenTofu and Terraform today that I don't think there's any serious path migrating away from what's currently defined as that protocol.
Great. We're going to keep the answers short just because we're running out of time. We want to allow more questions.
Hi. Do you think there will be a abstraction layer somewhere in OpenTofu that allows you to have configuration which is provider agnostic? Or do you think that's something a module should do, be like, I want a virtual machine, and I don't care if it's on GCP, Azure, AWS, I just want to, plug and play a little bit more?
That's an excellent question. There's a lot of, and this gets into custom typing and a few other things, but we recognize that the module barrier is not always the best abstraction. Sometimes you will have two modules that implement something like what you're talking about that happen to conform to the same interface. But one thing that I know Martin especially has been talking about, and we've got some issues open, possibly in RFC, but again, I've been out for 2 weeks, so my memory is a little bit fuzzy, but one of the things we're actively looking for is the ability to define custom types, custom interfaces to help ensuring that what you're building in an agnostic fashion between modules or resources can be swapped in a little bit easier with more guarantees. So take a look out for that GitHub issue, comment on it there, and help us figure out how to best solve that. Thank you.
Arel, do you have any thoughts? Okay. Go ahead.
Hi. As I'm transitioning from Terraform to OpenTofu, I'd like to maintain the same security insurance, and I'm thinking about OpenTofu new plugins or capability for security checks, or do I need to use the same Terraform's compatible tools that I already got, like Checkov or TFSec?
So TFSec and all the other tooling, we're trying to make sure we maintain compatibility with. Thankfully, a lot of these tools work based on the plan files and the state files that your tool is spitting out. And part of the 1.0 compatibility promise that OpenTofu and Terraform has is that the state file and the plan file format will not change. So we want to make sure that it's not just the output?
The command output.
The command output.
Yes, not the files, sorry, just to be clear, the actual format of the files stored in your bucket or wherever else may change. The output when you run tofu show, that is part of the compatibility promise. Sorry, just being a little careful there.
Yes. There's more details on our opentofu.org if you search compatibility promise in our documentation. But we want to make sure we're working with all of the tools in the ecosystem and even improve them where possible. So all of them support OpenTofu, and we're working closely with some of the authors of these tools as well to make sure it carries on.
Okay, thank you.
Awesome.
Thank you.
So this is it. I'm going to wrap up with one last question, for those who are on the fence, for those who are thinking about it, who are thinking about migrating, just a little bit of an understanding about, first, how long does it take for a feature request to get into the pipe and then be ultimately delivered, assuming it's a popular one? And then the second half of that question is, what does it look like supporting such a massive project at scale, and how do you guys kind of deal with that?
So I can answer the first part, and I'll pass off to either James or Arel for the second. Functionally, an issue comes in, and the next step is refinement by the core team. We take time, we look at all the issues that come in on a weekly basis. We figure out, is this something that can be worked on right away? Is it something that can be done by a community member? Is this something that we can just say, hey, who wants to work on this? Or is it something that needs further refinement? If it needs further refinement, it is sometimes coalesced with another issue, or it is turned into an RFC. An RFC is kind of where the rubber meets the road with defining large features. Issues are great. They get a snapshot of what someone is asking for. An RFC in the form of a pull request allows for a dialogue, allows for feedback, allows for multiple people to come in to propose changes, to talk about this in more detail. I can't, giving an actual timeline on this is difficult, but I can kind of describe what the process looks like and how we prioritize it. So from there, we create a tracking issue. Once an RFC is accepted, which then gets worked on by both core engineers and folks from the community, we get that across the line, alpha, beta, release. So it can be as soon as the next alpha, next beta, depending on the size of the issue, or sometimes it can take months or even years to refine some of these larger features because we want to make sure we are building the right thing. We're not just building the feature that solves one particular pain point, we're building a feature that can help as many people as possible, as seamless as possible.
Fantastic. Do you want to answer the support question, Arel?
Sure. So I think regarding, it's kind of similar support and feature requests and just issues we get in general. We've been dealing with the process of dealing with that for a long time. We've changed the process up, and what you've just mentioned regarding RFCs, this is somewhat new in our process, and we've also changed the RFC process for that. So we're constantly working on the process to make sure it's efficient, and when people have requests and it's a support request, gets the amount of, eyes on it and gets answered pretty quickly if it's something urgent. So yeah, we do that weekly. We take a look at all the new issues and we try to prioritize everything and deal with that. And I don't think we felt like we have not enough working hands to deal with the major things at least. So that's good, but
contributors always welcome.
Yeah, that's true. That
and maintainers always welcome.
And I was going to say, a lot of the time a new issue will come in, and one of the community members will, sorry, I'm getting over the limit, will handle it before we can even get a chance, which is phenomenal. Thank you.
Awesome. Put your hands together for the folks that are making OpenTofu production ready for all of us. Thank you so much.